Now, Final Score with Nick Walters on Fox 16.
Well, it's a special time of year, and it's a special edition of Final Score. We've looked forward to it all summer long, and in a blink of an eye, suddenly high school football is just days away. From reshuffle classes to new look teams, we're about to break down everything you need to know before the season. And to help us do just that is our friend Kyle Sutherland, a contributor at SBLive Arkansas and 103.7 The Buzz. You know, Kyle was actually with us for a segment last weekend. Now it's time to talk Friday Night Lights all show long. And Kyle, how excited are you for football to finally be back?
You know, it's always hard to put it into words. I think this one's a little bit more special for me because I've been doing this for a while as far as covering games and everything. This is my first time doing it full time and not having another job that I have to do during the day. So being able to focus on that fully, and of course going to be doing the game of the week, being one of the 3 contributors for the Buzz radio network game of the week is going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I think outside of all my other 32 other opening seasons that I've had, this might be a little bit more special.
Yeah, so Kyle, you're really becoming a part of this Arkansas high school sports fraternity, the community of journalists, and we love to talk some football, and that's what we're about to do. So here's how this is going to work. In the next half hour, we'll go from 7A to 2A, show how realignment altered the landscape, see some highlights from defending state champs, and declare some frontrunners for this fall, and point out a few notable ballers in each class. So let's start off with Conference 7A Central, and there at the top, of course, the 4-time defending state champs, the BRYANT Hornets. And of course, Buck James, they're going to be looking for that 5-peat this fall. Now Conway, North Little Rock, Cabot, Northside, Southwest, Central, and 6A East Conference champ Jonesboro, they're moving up into this conference. Little Rock Catholic, they're moving down to 6A East, so this conference stays at 8 teams. But those highlights right there, that's a War Memorial Stadium in December, Bryant knocking off Fayetteville to take state. What do you make of this Bryant team this year?
Well, I think that you can take a lot of what you saw last year, particularly in this game right here, the way that Bryant really just, I would say they outcoached Fayetteville in some ways, but I would also just say it was more out-disciplined. And that's not a knock on Fayetteville. That's just what Bryant does to everybody that we've seen. They haven't lost an in-state game since 2019, and just the way that they are able to, I guess you could say, reload. We always use the term rebuild, but that's what they do is they reload. And Bryant's going to have a definite uphill climb this year, having to replace all those offensive linemen, one of the best offensive lines that we've seen in recent memory, and of course having to replace the quarterback as well for the 3rd time in 3 years.
Yeah, Bryant, obviously, I mean, when you have Pulaski Academy in this state, it's kind of odd to say that PA is not the #1 team in this state, but when Bryant, they have that resume of winning state championship after state championship, it's going to be hard to beat that kind of team in 7A. But out of these teams in 7A Central, who has the best chance to knock off the defending champs?
Well, Conway just about did it last year, and that goes back to what I was saying about how disciplined Bryant is. You have to play with them for 48 minutes, no more, no less, especially no less. And with how that game ended against Conway, and then what they were able to do in the playoffs, getting back to another state title and winning it, I think that Conway is definitely going to be out looking for blood. They want to beat this team just like everybody else. Bryant has a target on their back, as they always have with North Little Rock, who has been the last team in state to beat them in 2019. So I think that those two teams, once again, Conway and North Little Rock, are going to pose the biggest threat to anybody of the in-state teams. Now Bryant has that game with Denton Ryan and Shreveport that's going to be a great one as well. But as far as Arkansas teams, it's probably once again North Little Rock and Conway at the top that could possibly knock them off.
Yeah, you know, Kyle, before we move on to 7A West, if Bryant was to actually complete a 5-peat, 5 straight state championships in the state's highest classification, does that just cement this team and this program as the best Arkansas has ever seen?
I think certainly the best. I don't know if I would put any of those teams as the best team to ever play. There's some ones that you could certainly put up for debate, but in terms of dynasty, yeah, I don't really know how they could be touched now. Some of the Central fans and alum might argue with some of those teams back in the 50s and around that time, but I just think with the way that football is in the modern game and what Bryant has done, if they get that one for the thumb, I don't think there's any question that's going to be the greatest dynasty in the history of
No doubt.
Arkansas.
It's a whole lot of Tom Brady's over there right now with Bryant. Yeah, they're filling up one hand, and Buck James might have some rings on a second hand here eventually to come next year. But let's go and move on to 7A West, because we got the Northwest part of the state to talk about. In Fayetteville, the defending state runner-ups, of course, they're in the class along with Bentonville, Rogers, Bentonville West, Harbor, Southside, Springdale, and Rogers Heritage. 7A West is unchanged from last year, and most of these conferences we're going to talk about later in the show, there's a lot of major changes. So when you look at this conference, how does it kind of shake up with the loss of Isaiah Satenia at Fayetteville and all these new look rosters?
Well, there's just about every school, I think, maybe other than Harbor with Luke Buchanan, they're bringing in a new quarterback, or at least somebody that didn't start the whole entire year last season. But you always have to look at Fayetteville right there. Last year, Casey Dick and his staff did an incredible job with the guys that they had getting to the state championship in year 3. Now it's what can you do after the Bladen Fikes and the Isaiah Satenias. And then you look over in Bentonville, both West and Bentonville's been pretty much the king of that conference other than last year when Fayetteville won it. But I think right there at the top, you look at Fayetteville, Bentonville, and Bentonville West, and it's pretty much just a toss-up right now until we actually start seeing them play.
No doubt. I mean, there's a lot of talent all over the state, so it's always recycling year in and year out. So it's going to be cool to see what young guys can step up there in Northwest Arkansas. But moving on to the game changers of this class, because like coaches say, they just call the plays. The players are the ones making them, right? We have Bryant wide receiver KARTER RATLIFF, who is only a sophomore, being one of Kyle's 3 standouts in this class, who can make a big difference. That it's along with Conway senior running back Boogie Carr, who was an all-state selection last year, and the Razorbacks commit at North Little Rock defensive end Quincy Rhodes. But just to touch on KARTER RATLIFF at Bryant, it's odd to see a sophomore get this much attention preseason. What makes him a special player?
Well, Mytorian Singleton, when you think about Bryant wideouts, that's the first one that you look at with what he did last year. I mean, he was the one that essentially helped, not that, you know, he did it by himself, but really helped win the Conway game, helped win the state championship with 2 clutch plays, and then on top of what all else he did last season. But looking at Ratliff this offseason and what he was able to do, particularly in the shootout of the South, the 7-on-7 tournament, and then what I saw him do in the scrimmage game against when Bryant was playing a couple of Saturdays ago. He's 6'5", can catch anything. Malachi, I think it was one of the Graham twins, had perfect coverage on him, and defensive coaches certainly couldn't be mad at whichever Graham it was because it was great coverage, but KARTER just went up there and he got the ball. That's what he does, and that's what he's going to do, I think, a lot this season, and he could do it as soon as the Salt Bowl. He just makes great plays.
Yeah, a lot of fun there in 7A, and it's going to be a thrill to see who can get to War Memorial Stadium there in December. But we got a whole lot more coming up. Of course, 6A down to 2A, all coming up right after the break.
You're watching Final Score on Fox 16.
Back to Final Score, everybody. We are previewing the high school football season that is only just days away, and we're here with Kyle Sutherland to help us out with it. We already covered 7A, but now we're going to 6A. A lot of changes in this class. Of course, Pulaski Academy coming into it. Let's start off with the 6A East Conference and list off these schools. We have El Dorado, Sylvan Hills, Marion, Searcy, West Memphis, and Sheridan. Of course, El Dorado, the defending state champs. And the newcomers in this conference, we have Benton, Jacksonville, Catholic, Greene County Tech, and the ones leaving, you have Jonesboro moving up to 7A and Pine Bluff moving down to 5A. So this conference is now 10 teams strong. What a really mega conference. How do you see this conference shaking up with El Dorado there at the top?
Yeah, the first time this has ever happened to have this many in one conference, and I think a lot are sleeping on El Dorado because you lose over 5,000 yards of offense or whatever it was, especially with Sharman Rester leaving there, Jackie Washington, Cam Bibby, but they do return DeAndre Burns. They return Shadarius Plummer, the MVP of the 6A state championship game, and then they return a defensive guy at each level. So I think that with them having that experience, the guys that are still on the team having that experience, going to War Memorial, especially after starting the season at 2-2 and then going on a 9-game win streak, I certainly think that they're going to be up there at the top. And someone that's going to pose a threat to them, though, is Benton. They were certainly not happy with the way that last season ended after winning the 6A West, and I think that especially with Braylon Russell there, the Arkansas commit that transferred in from Lakeside, him and Chris Bernard there in the backfield, a great offensive line, plus a really stout defense, particularly in their front 7. Yep. Benton and El Dorado, to me, right there at the top.
Yeah, those are the 2 front runners, and that's fair to say, especially when you have Braylon Russell coming in as that star junior back, and a lot of people think that he is the best running back the state has seen, or at least could be since Darren McFadden. So we'll see if that comes to fruition there in Benton. But on to 6A West, where we have a big change in Pulaski Academy joining. But let's start off with the teams that are returning in Greenwood, Lake Hamilton, Russellville, Mountain Home, Van Buren, and Siloam Springs. But the newcomers, that's the big storyline with this class, people. We have Pulaski Academy, the 3-time defending state champs in 5A, moving up along with their crosstown rival Little Rock Christian and Greenbrier, who had a sensational season last year. And the ones exiting are Benton, who are going across the class, and Parkview that moves down to 5A. So let's just start with Pulaski Academy and what this means for the class of 6A.
Well, first off, I hate the term murderer's row. I use it sometimes, but I think this is appropriate with what this conference, with all they have in it, and starting that with PA, the winners of 7 of the last 8 5A state championships, and the one that got the one they didn't win was Little Rock Christian, and they're going to be right there as well. And then you have a, right now at least, healthy Greenwood team that's going to be out there looking for blood with the way that, of course, they went to the state championship game last year banged up with a lot of 3rd and 4th stringers pretty much, but especially with what they have coming back. I mean, right there at the top, you certainly got to put PA and Greenwood. I think Little Rock Christian certainly is right there behind them. And then you bring in 5A, a great team from the 5A West last year, Greenbrier. They are also losing a good bit, but anytime you got Randy Tribble there on your sidelines, you know that they're going to put good product on the field.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how PA and Anthony Lucas can do on the next level. I just talked to him last week. They're very confident. But losing Joe Hyman and whatnot, it is going to be a challenge, and it is going to be fun to see. Let's go ahead and go see 3 big-time players within this class that can make a huge difference on Fridays coming up. Pulaski Academy junior running back Kenny Jordan, he's taking the place and filling the shoes of Joe Hyman. Benton senior defensive lineman Hunter Goodwin, and Greenbrier running back and linebacker Eli Weaver. Those are 3 game breakers that Kyle here thinks can have a major impact on this upcoming season. But let's go ahead and roll into Class 5A, shall we? And let's start with 5A South with Camden, Fairview, Magnolia, Lakeside, Hot Springs, Hope, Arkansas, and DeQueen, and the big newcomer, Parkview. And of course, Parkview has had so much talent in recent years, but here they are moving down to 5A. How does Parkview's entrance in this class make a big difference?
Well, this could very well be the year that they get that state championship. Brad Bolding has had them in the semifinals multiple times, been right there on the verge of getting to a state championship game, and right there on the other side of the ball, got his brother Bobby, that's one of the greatest coaches to ever walk the sidelines in Arkansas high school football history. So I think with him running that defense, along with Brad and his staff who they have on that team, they're certainly going to be one of the top favorites in the 5A South, along with Camden Fairview, who's led by Parkview's former defensive coordinator Nick Vaughn. But also too, another one, Nick, that I think that some aren't mentioning enough is Magnolia. They run that flex bone under Mark King, and they play great defense. They got a lot of guys coming back on the defensive side of the ball, and a lot coming back offensively, particularly at running back and the offensive line. And so I think those 3 teams right there, that Week 10 matchup with Parkview and Camden Fairview, is really going to be one to watch. Could be for the conference championship.
No doubt. Yeah, Parkview, when they move down from 6A, that's an instant contender within this class. But moving to 5A Central, shall we? We have Whitehall, who is the state runner-up. They lost to PA last December. Maumelle, they lose Andrew Chambly, now Nico Davlier, who are Razorbacks. And we have BB, Watson Chapel, who Maurice Moody is trying to turn around after a winless season. But entering is Robinson, the defending 4A state champs, Valonia, Morrilton, Pine Bluff, and Mills, while Pulaski Academy and Little Rock Christian, along with Jacksonville, exit, going 7 teams to 10. The storyline of this is Robinson. The Senators moving up, and can they continue that success after winning 2 state titles over the last 3 years?
I think so. That's another team. We talked about Bryant, the way that they reload. That's what Robinson has done for a long time. It's not like that they just got good over the last couple of years, like 2 or 3 years. They had been on the cusp of getting to a state championship for multiple years. They finally got it, I believe it was in 2018. And then, of course, won in 19 and 21. Got a lot coming back this year, a lot to replace. But tons of, especially Quentin Murphy's one that I'm going to be really looking at there in that quarterback, right now the quarterback competition that they have. If he doesn't win the spot, they're going to find a place for him. He's a sophomore that's already got P5 offers. That's one to really keep an eye on there for the Senators.
Tatascola squad, they're going to be out for blood with a new challenge, and that's going to be really fun to see. But let's go ahead and wrap up with these other 5A conferences and list off the teams so you know who's going to be playing. In the 5A West, there's Farmington, Harrison, Alma, Pea Ridge, Clarksville, and the newcomers in this conference are Shiloh Christian, the defending 4A state runner-up, along with Prairie Grove, Dardanelle, exiting Greenbrier, Valonia, and Morrilton. So the 5A West stays at 8 teams. And let's go and roll into 5A East, where we find Nettleton, Wynn, Valley View, Batesville, Brooklyn, Forest City, and Paragould, while Southside enters, and Greene County Tech exits, and that conference also stays at 8 teams. So between the 5A West and 5A East, is there one big contender we want to note?
I'll tell you, from the 5A West, I'm going to be looking at Farmington. They really struck gold when they got J.R. Eldredge from North Little Rock after the 2020 season. I think he's one of the top, I don't think it's crazy to say he's one of the top 3 coaches in the state of Arkansas, just what he was able to do at ARKADELPHIA, and then that 1 year at North Little Rock going to the state championship. And so I think that Farmington is going to be, they had a great year last year, but I think that's one that could make some noise and possibly go on a run in Class 5A.
Yeah, Farmington is definitely one.
And you got to look at Shiloh Christian as well, of course, coming up from 4A, what they've done all the way down since they were in the lower classes in Class 4A. That's another big one to watch.
Robinson and Shiloh, that's been the 2 opponents in the 4A state championship game for 3 years straight. And hey, we're going to see them now in 5A. But 3 game breakers within 5A that Kyle would note. Maumelle senior tight end Amari Rogers, we saw him in FOX16 last night. Robinson senior wide receiver defensive back Brandon Grail, and Parkview sophomore defensive back Amarion Robinson, all of which have a great chance to make big plays on Friday nights. But let's go ahead and move on to Class 4A, because we have another big headline within 4A, and that is the realignments, the shifting going on as Harding Academy, the defending state champs in 3A, they are moving up along with the 3A power McGee, while Robinson and Shiloh and Little Rock Mills all exit. So Harding Academy's presence in 4A, what does that mean for the landscape?
Well, you look at Harding Academy since the mid to late 70s. They've won a B championship, A. They've won pretty much at every level that they've ever been to. So they're an automatic contender to me with what Neil Evans has done there, coming off of a three-peat in Class 3A. And then McGee, another one of those that's been a thorn in so many sides in the playoffs for so many years in Class 3A. So there's a lot of 3A teams that are breathing a sigh of relief, and both of them are major contenders, of course, right there with Warren, ARKADELPHIA. Got to throw Stuttgart in there as well, and Malvern, if they can stay healthy. They started, I think it was 8 or 9 sophomores last year, particularly on defense, and did a pretty good job for the most part. So that's, you always got to throw them in.
You mentioned ARKADELPHIA and Malvern, so let's go ahead and look at 4 contenders within this class of 4A that might be able to make it to War Memorial in December. We have ARKADELPHIA, who Kyle mentioned, Warren, Harding Academy, Stuttgart. Malvern is kind of a dark horse in this class, and 2 key players we throw out there: Cedric Hawkins, the running back at Stuttgart, who is an A-state commit. Also, Donovan Witten, the quarterback at ARKADELPHIA, who could put up some serious numbers. So, Kyle, it is going to be a fun time in 4A, just like any class, but we got some more to talk about in 3A and 2A. Some small school, high school football is going to be coming up right after the break. Stick with us.
You're watching Final Score on Fox 16.
Welcome back to Final Score, everybody. We are looking forward to the high school football season starting up right here in about 10 days. We cannot wait to hit the gridiron again. We're joined by Kyle Sutherland, who is helping us break down every single class. We've been from 7A down to 4A, and now it's time for some high school football in the small towns. Can't get any better than that right there, right? No. So let's start off with Class 3A. We had some changes due to realignment. We have Fordyce and Junction City entering the 3A, while Harding Academy moves up, along with McGee moving up to 4A. But Fordyce has been a contender for years in 2A, now moving up to 3A. What does that mean for the Redbucks?
Well, Fordyce recently, and right before that, Junction City. And David Carpenter, the guy that won 6 state titles from 2003 to 2014 before he retired in 16, is back on the sidelines. Junction City, they won it with Stephen Jones, of course, now at El Dorado in 2018, and then have kind of taken a drop off really since then. So David Carpenter's back on the sidelines, an extremely enticing story there for Junction City. But Fordyce is another one I think that they always tend to feel, especially last year. Most people didn't expect them to get back to the state championship game after winning back-to-back. That coaching staff they've got under Tim Rogers, they got a great one there. They always turn out great athletes, and so I think that both Fordyce and maybe not Junction City this year, but I think Fordyce and Junction City will be contenders in the 3A sooner than later.
The 2A team's moving up, but of course there are some big dogs there in 3A that they don't want to relinquish that throne of theirs, and that includes Prescott, the defending state runner-up, who lost to Harding Academy. Booneville, HOXIE, Camden Harmony Grove, a dark horse there in 3A might just be Glen Rose. So when you look at Prescott and Booneville, are those kind of 2 of the front runners in this class?
I think them, of course, HOXIE, you always have to throw, right, especially with Harding Academy and McGee out, you've always got to throw the HOXIEs, the Prescotts, the Boonevilles in there. They're always in, either if they're not going to the state championship game, they're pretty dang close to it, quarterfinals or semis. So I think certainly those 3 right there, and then Camden Harmony Grove, Grove, got a lot of great athletes on that team. And Glen Rose, they always have been pretty good. You know, it seems like they're at least pretty consistent, a playoff team at the very minimum. And so I think that that's one that can make a lot of noise as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Prescott is sighing relief here with Harding Academy being out, because Prescott was so darn good last fall, and here we are, and they're going to be a front runner within 3A. But moving down to the state's smallest classification, saving the best for last, some might say, because small school high school football is that great around here. Mount Ida, Hazen, Bigelow, and Desark, those are some contenders that Kyle sees within 2A. Other notables include East Poinsett County, Poen, Hector, and McCrory, the defending state champ McCrory. So what do you make of this Class 2A? Obviously, there's always so much unpredictability with small school high school football.
Well, McCrory is going to be a completely new look team. They lose just about everybody, including their head coach, Chris Kennan. So they're going to have a new head coach, a lot of new players, and that's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. Poen has really been one of those teams, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. Vic Barrett done a fantastic job there at a program that's not really had I think they've had a program for a little over 10 years. But one that is really intriguing to me is East Poinsett County. They started off 0-6 last year, won 5 of their last 6, made it to the second or third round of the playoffs. But either way, they finished way stronger than they started, and they've got about 15, 16 returners back. So that's going to be one to see. And then Hector is another enticing one, because that's kind of one that I look from the outside looking in. Had a great year, bring a lot back, but they didn't beat anybody with a winning record last year. And when they did play the Quitmans, the Bigelows, that's also they didn't really go very well. So that's also a concern for me. But Bigelow, the way that last year ended, they're going to be extremely upset with how that, especially in the second round.
Yeah, the end of that game with Bigelow in the playoffs, it's heart-wrenching just to think about. 2A is always going to be fun to see, and it's always fun to have Kyle in studio with us. We appreciate your time, and we cannot wait for the 26th when high school football kicks off in Arkansas. Kyle, good having you.
Yep, thank you so much.
And you can find Kyle on Twitter at K_Sutherland AR, and we'll be right back after this.
You're watching Final Score on Fox 16.